and I am the president of Gold Star Medical Business Services. I'm presenting this webinar on behalf of Dr. Fennell, and I do appreciate all of you who are here on the call today, taking the time to listen to me for the next 45 minutes to an hour. We're going to be talking on a very, very important topic for medical and chiropractic offices, and that is the topic of the importance of accurate insurance verifications. And so we'll be getting into that in just a few minutes, but I do want to give you a little bit of a introduction as far as who's speaking to you today, for those of you who have never heard me speak. Again, I'm the president of Gold Star Medical Business Services. I hold certifications as a certified medical coder, a certified medical insurance specialist, a certified medical office manager, and a certified medical compliance specialist. I also own and operate a outsourced medical billing company and a medical consulting company. And I have actually been involved in the chiropractic field since 1982. Most of my clients are chiropractors. I do a lot of speaking at local and state chiropractic association meetings and conventions, and I also am on the faculty of an organization called Practice Management Institute. I'm actually getting ready to leave here tomorrow to go and teach at their national convention in Las Vegas. And so one of the things that I think is interesting from the standpoint of what I can bring to the table to chiropractors is that I work a lot with medical doctors as well. I know what insurance companies are looking for as far as documentation compliance for both medical doctors and chiropractors, and I get to see kind of both sides of the coin. So hopefully the information that I bring to you today is going to be valuable to you, is going to help your bottom line, and that's what we're really all about, is helping you improve your collections and the bottom line, making sure that you're actually getting paid for the services that you render and you don't leave money on the table. So I think Dr. Fennell has come on the line. Dr. Fennell, did you have anything that you wanted to add to that?
No, Lisa. In fact, I just joined. I had an issue, technologically speaking, I wasn't able to call in. So you were saying, hello, Dr. Fennell. I was trying to talk to my computer microphone, which wasn't working, of course. So
that's okay.
It was a browser, so I switched to IE, and it worked fine. So I'm on now. But you've already given yourself your own welcome, it sounds, an introduction, which you've done a great job, probably better than I could have. But I just want to thank you and express our gratitude for you coming on. You've been a wonderful resource for a lot of the CHFA doctors who have questions, and I know you've done some consultations with some of them, and I think there's some that's actually using you now for doing their billing and collections with their practices, and so I hear feedback and good things. So I really appreciate you for doing this webinar, and a lot of doctors do their insurance in-house. This would be a great benefit for their staff and the doctors who are on with us today. So thank you very much. I'll keep my phone muted during the call here, just so that way I don't have any background sound or something like that. But yeah, I'm glad to be on here with you guys.
Oh, no problem. I'm going to also mute everybody who is on the call at this time, just so that we don't have feedback. This call is being recorded, and we will make sure that, doctors, if you're on this call and your staff is not, and as you begin to listen to the topic that we're discussing, you may be thinking, wow, I sure wish my staff was able to hear this, and they will. So, we're going to make sure that this is recorded for them so that they can listen to it. So I'm going to put everybody on mute. I will unmute everyone at the time that, let's see if I can mute all. Yeah, there we go. So I will unmute everyone at the end of the presentation so that you have an opportunity to ask any questions you have. And again, if you do have questions that you would just like to type into the chat box so we have those ahead of time, we can go ahead and answer those questions at the end of the presentation. So without further ado, today's presentation is going to be on insurance verifications. And, if I think about, from when I first started, in this industry back in 1982. If somebody had told me they were going to teach a class on insurance verifications, I would think to myself, why? I mean, it's such a simple process. All you have to do is call the insurance company and take down some information, and then you know what to collect from the patient and you know what to expect from the insurance company. Well, insurance back then and insurance now are two totally different birds. And one of the reasons why accurate insurance verifications are so very important nowadays is that unlike 30 years ago or 35 years ago or even 15 years ago, insurance reimbursements nationally only make up between 30 to 50% of the doctor's total fee for service. The remainder of the money that is billed out is usually split between a contractual write-off if you're a network with an insurance plan and a patient copay, or a coinsurance amount and deductible, which is known as a cost share. And if you don't know what to collect from the patient at the time of service, your doctor could literally, or you could literally lose up to 50% of your total revenue by not knowing what to collect from the patient. And remember, it's always easier and less costly for you to collect from your patient at the time of service than to bill them later. I'm going to show you a slide that I use on a lot of my screens and a lot of my presentations. And this is an example of the importance of timely collections. There was a study done several years back by the Commercial Law League of America in which they analyzed local businesses, local and national businesses, and analyzed their accounts receivables and the value of their accounts receivables. So essentially what they looked at is, for every dollar that you bill out, what happens to that dollar if you don't collect it at the time of service? So if you allow an account to age out over 30 days, you're going to lose about 10% of that dollar. If you allow it to age out over 60 days, you're going to lose about 15% of that dollar. 90 days goes down to 25%, and then if you hit 6 months, you're going to be able to collect maybe 50 cents on that dollar, and if it goes out over a year, you're looking at about 25 cents on the dollar. Now you ask yourself that question, well, how could that be? You have to remember that the more money you spend on trying to get somebody to pay you, the less the dollar amount that you build out is worth. So it's not just a matter of getting paid, it's a matter of the overhead that is involved in getting paid. So if you're, for example, if you have a policy in your office where you bill all of your patients for remaining balances and you don't try to collect that money at the time of service, you have to think about the fact that you pay somebody to print statements. You pay somebody to fold those statements and mail those statements, and you pay for the paper and the envelopes and the postage. And then you pay people to call patients if they haven't made a payment. And by the time you've done all of that, plus the likelihood that there are going to be a certain percentage of patients who simply ignore your requests for payment, and that there may be insurance carriers who don't pay you if you exceed a timely filing or a timely appeal limitation. This chart is extremely accurate. This is about what you can expect. So why would you take all of that time to render these services? And it doesn't really matter if we're talking about cash services or if we're talking about insurance services. And I know that many of you who are listening to this, and specialize as hand and foot practitioners, do a lot of cash-based services. And yet I see, and I've talked to a number of you over the last year or so, who readily admit that even though you're a cash-based service, you don't always require the patients to pay at the time of service. And so basically you're going to find yourself in the same model of of loss of revenue if you do not collect as much of your revenue as you can at the time services are rendered. So what is the key? The key, number one, is if you do bill out insurance, that you make sure that you are verifying, number one, that the patient is even eligible to receive benefits and receive chiropractic benefits. And number two is find out what that benefit structure is. So that will allow you to collect that patient's cost share more accurately. So my recommendation is that, number one, it goes without saying that if a new patient calls in and they have insurance, that you check benefits on every new patient. All right, you should never see a new patient and have them have them walk in, give you an insurance card, and assume that just because they give you an insurance card, they're covered. That insurance card could be out of date. It could be that their policy has been terminated. It could be that they now have a new plan with a new employer. It could be that that insurance card is not their primary carrier, but their secondary carrier. So really and truly, all of this is something that you would want to establish by the end of that first visit at the very least, or at least to be able to establish eligibility by the end of the first visit, and then possibly be able to find out more detail on future benefits by the second visit or so. So you would want to check benefits on all new patients. You would want to check benefits on all established patients who have not been seen in at least 3 months. Okay, now that's a big change from years past when we would tell doctors to check benefits annually on established patients. I believe that because of the Obamacare plans and because of the fact that more and more patients have individual policies, they have to pay their premiums monthly. And so an individual plan is a month-to-month plan. If a patient does not pay their premium, they have 3 months to catch up on their premiums, or their policy goes out of force. And during that 3-month period, some insurance companies will hold payments to the carrier until the policy is brought current. And so it's important for you to know the eligibility status, at the very least, of the established patient if they haven't been seen in the last 3 months or so. And you certainly would want to do an online eligibility check on your maintenance patients or your returning patients on a monthly basis. You could do a more detailed verification every 3 months, but at the very least, you should go online to the carrier site and just make sure that their policy is in force. You also want to check benefits on every patient at the start of each calendar year. Now we're coming up to that here in a couple of months. January 1 is going to roll around, and with that, all of your patients are going to have a new rollout of their policy. Their benefits are going to reset for the most part. You may have some patients who are on fiscal policies like school teachers, where their policy year actually starts September 1st or August 1st and goes through July 31st. But most patients have a calendar year policy. And as such, you're going to want to check benefits at the start of each calendar year to make sure that the established patients don't have a new deductible that has reset, or an increase in their deductible, or an increase in their copay. They may have a new policy altogether. Many employers will renegotiate their policies with new carriers, and they'll shop around for a new insurance carrier for their employees. And so, if you just make the assumption that this patient has the same insurance they had last year, you may be in for a surprise. And then if that patient is gone and you have to track that patient down, then you're going to be in that rut of having to chase that money. You don't want to have to do that. So check benefits on every patient at the start of each calendar year. Check benefits at the start of each fiscal year if the patient has a fiscal policy. So that would be examples like school teachers and college students. Many times their policies are going to run from the fall to the late summer rather than January 1st to December 31st. So what do we do in order to conduct accurate insurance verifications? The first step is to gather up the information. And if you want to have the verification done by the end of that first appointment, then you're going to have to make a commitment to gather that information on the telephone at the time you're making the appointment or at the time of check-in or registration. And if that's the case, then you may or may not be able to get that insurance verified by the end of that first visit. It really depends on your staff resources, how busy you are, how long it takes to get through to the insurance company. But like I said, most insurance carriers now do have online eligibility checks. And so at the very least, what you should do is, if you do not gather up that information on the phone at the time the appointment is made, then what you're going to want to do is gather up that information at the time of check-in and then do a quick eligibility check online and make sure that the patient is eligible for benefits before they leave the office that day. The second step is going to be to obtain the benefits and get the benefit quote. And you can do this online. You can do this by telephone, or you can have a benefit quote faxed over to you. And the insurance carrier, as you go through the IVR, the interactive voice response system, they will give you options as to what you want to do. If you want to hold and talk to somebody, if you would like to go online, they will give you the website to go to gather the online benefits, or they will also ask if you would like to have them faxed, and you can give them your fax number and they'll fax you the benefits. And then the third step is to explain the benefits to your patients and help them understand what their fiscal responsibility is toward you and toward your clinic and the treatment plan that you've proposed for them. So we're going to break this down a little bit, and we're going to talk about all of these steps for the remainder of the class, and then we will open this up for questions. So let's talk about the gathering of information. There are two things you need, two pieces of information general that you're going to need. You're going to need patient information and provider information, okay? And so the patient information that you need to complete accurate verifications of benefits is, number one, the name of the patient. And I want you to write this down and take notes. I will send this presentation to Dr. Fennell. He'll be able to send you handouts of this. But you can also take notes. Now, when I say the name of the patient that when you're for the purposes of insurance verifications must match exactly the name of the name that is on the patient's insurance card. So if you're on the telephone, so let's say you're the front desk and you've just scheduled a new patient, and now you're going to ask them, Mrs. Smith, do you have insurance you'd like us to check on for you? And Mrs. Smith says, well, as a matter of fact, I do. And she tells you when you schedule her, my name is Mary Smith. Okay. So Mrs. Smith, yes, you have insurance. So would you do me a favor? Let's get, do you have a copy of your insurance card handy? If they say yes, then you say, okay, please tell me what your name says on the insurance card. And then she's going to maybe say something like Elizabeth Mary Smith. So if you were to try to verify benefits under Mary Smith and you didn't have the full name, the insurance carrier may not be able to find that patient. So it has to match exactly. So in other words, her name is really Elizabeth Mary, but she goes by her middle name, Mary, and that's her nickname. So make sure you have the name of the patient exactly as it appears on the insurance card. You'll also need to ask the patient for their date of birth. And you'll need to ask the patient if they are the primary insured on that policy, or if another person is the primary. So, for example, Mary Smith may have insurance, but she's covered under her husband's policy. in that case, the name of the insured would be the husband. The policy ID would be the policy ID of the patient, not of the insured. And you would also possibly need the insured's date of birth. So if the patient and the insured are the same, then you don't need two pieces of information. But if not, then you need to have both the patient's date of birth and the insured's name and date of birth. You'll need to get the name of the insurance carrier and the name and the telephone number for the customer service unit that can usually be found on the back of the card. Another thing that you might want to do, and it's not written here, but you may want to make a note on it, is if the patient has their card in front of them and you haven't seen the card yet, you might want to ask them if the card specifies a plan name. So the plan name, let's say it's Blue Cross Blue Shield, it might be Blue Access PPO, or it might be Humana PPO-X, or it might be Cigna HMO replacement, okay? And why do you need to know that? The reason you would need to know that is because there may be certain plans. Let's say you're in network with Blue Cross, but you're not in network with the HMOs. If you can find out that that patient has a Blue Cross HMO plan, then at that point, you could let them know right off the bat that you are not a member or a participating provider with that HMO and save everybody a lot of grief, because if that patient comes in and you have not pre-verified that benefit and this is an HMO and you're not in network with that HMO, that patient is not going to have any chiropractic benefits. Now, that may not stop them from coming. It could be that they still want to see you, but it is important for the patient to know in advance. And if you are participating with the HMO, it would be important for you to know that the patient has that HMO, because they may require that they receive a referral from their primary care doctor before they can see you for services. And so you make sure you find out what the name of the plan is. Your insurance department in your office should be gathering up names of plans and contracts that you are in network with. And so as they gather this up, they can begin to keep a database and share that with the front desk. So if a patient says, well, I belong, I have this insurance and this type of plan, that front desk may be able to guide the patient a little bit better as to what they need to do prior to their appointment in order to get the benefits. So make sure you get all of that. The other thing you're going to need in order to do an insurance verification is the chief complaint. Sometimes the insurance company will ask you for a diagnosis. If it's a new patient, obviously you don't have a diagnosis, but something general like neck pain, low back pain, chronic headaches, you may have to give that information to the insurance company. So make sure that you get that information from the patient. Now, the provider information you need to do an accurate verification is going to be obviously the name of the doctor or provider who's rendering the service. Now, if you're a solo doctor, this is not going to be a hard thing to do. But if you are working in a clinic where there are multiple doctors, multiple associate doctors, this is going to be important, is who is going to be rendering the service to that patient. Because I have run into situations where an organization like American Hand and Foot Clinic Incorporated is in network with a plan, but some of the associate doctors that work for that clinic are not in network with the plan. And so if it really helps determine how to bill out claims, because if you bill out the claim under a certain provider and that provider is out of network, then the benefit is going to be different than if you provide the services with a different provider within that organization. And we can, if any of you are listening to this call and you have that situation where you have multiple providers in your organization and some are in network and some are not in network, if you would like to set up a separate call with me to discuss that situation and discuss how to get all of that streamlined, I'd be more than happy to talk with you about that. So just keep that in mind. I also have put, just to let you know, I have put in my chat box my information, my telephone number, my email address, my cell number, my website. So there's no reason why you can't reach me, and I welcome having you give me a call if you need help with any of this. The other thing that you're going to need in order to do the accurate verifications is the tax ID of the doctor or the clinic, EIN or doctor social security number, depending on how you're billing, the NPI of the clinic or the NPI of the provider rendering the service. And if possible, you should know and begin to keep a database of your contracts that you are in and out of network with. So because the benefit structures are different. If you are out of network with a certain plan, there is going to be one benefit structure, or maybe there will be no benefits at all. But if you're in network, it'll be a completely different benefit structure. So, and sometimes if you don't know, you can find out from the carrier at the time you do the verification of benefits. So let's talk about the different types of verifications. You have online verifications, which are the fastest way to get to do an eligibility check. The problem with online verifications is that it does not always give you the detailed information about benefit limits, deductible status, and so on and so forth. So a lot of times if you go online, the best you can do is to confirm that the patient still has an active policy, which means you can bill it. Maybe if you go down and look for chiropractic benefits on the online benefit, you'll see some information about chiropractic benefits. But in all honesty, they're not always accurate. And sometimes you will do an online benefit quote and then call the insurance company and get two different answers as to what the benefits are. And the question is always which one is right. And so online verifications are efficient for general family practice clinics, and also for just determining whether the patient is eligible for benefits and if you need to know if they've met their deductible and that type of thing. But if you're a specialist, and as chiropractors we're considered specialists, it is always best to verify benefits live with a customer service representative. Now, even live benefits, I'm just going to say, is not a guarantee that you're going to get an accurate benefit quote. Insurance plans now are getting more and more complicated and convoluted, and so you could call 2 or 3 different times and get 2 or 3 different answers. And I know that it's a very frustrating situation that we're encountering nowadays with the different benefit structures, and some services have a copay and some services have a deductible and a coinsurance. But the bottom line is you get the best information you can, you relay that to the patient, and let them know with a huge disclaimer that the information that you're providing them is simply information that was provided to you by the carrier, and that you can no more guarantee those benefits any more than they do. And that's honestly, if you've ever listened to an insurance verification, the first thing that customer service representative is going to say is, did you listen to our disclaimer? Or they're going to say, we need to let you know that this is not a guarantee of benefits. Okay, so you just need to make sure that that information is being relayed to your patients. Faxed verifications, there are some carriers that will not even speak to you until you request a faxed verification. United Medical Resources, or UMR, is like that. So if you have patients that are UMR patients and you try to call for benefits, that you won't be able to get a live body. You'll have to request a fax of the verification, and on the fax form there is going to be a code. Then at that time you can call in and you have to key in that 6-digit code and then get a live person to speak to. So faxed verifications, there are going to be a few carriers that only provide verifications using this method. It will usually give very basic information, but nothing about limits. And as many of you know, if you're a chiropractor, many insurance plans have visit limits, annual visit limits, 12 visits, 15 visits, 20, 30 visits per calendar year. You need to know that. You need to know how many visits the patient has used. Possibly the patient has gone to another chiropractor early in the year and they've already used up all of their benefits, even if they are eligible. Sometimes on the online and the faxed verifications, the databases can be outdated. However, one of the good things about obtaining online eligibility and faxed eligibility is because when you print it from the website, it gives you a time and date stamp and the web address at the very top of the form header. That would indicate you could appeal a claim based on receiving that, because it's almost like a written contract. So it is a very appealable situation if you are incorrectly coded benefits in writing. And so that's definitely appealable. Now, phone or live verifications, even though, what I said was that, you may get 2 or 3 different answers, believe it or not, phone or live verifications are still the most accurate method of obtaining a benefit quote from an insurance carrier. It also allows you as a specialist to check specific limitations of specialty practices. As a hand and foot doctor, one of the things that you are always going to want to check on is whether the CPT code 98943 is a covered service, and you should be asking that question on every insurance verification, because some insurance plans follow Medicare guidelines, and you may actually hear that when they do a benefit quote. And if they say we follow Medicare guidelines, what they are saying is that they only cover 98940, 98941, and 98942, and they don't cover any other services. So it's important for you to ask that question, is to check specific codes that you may be performing on a routine basis at your office. Also, by talking with somebody, you can get the name of a claims representative, the time of your call, record that, and get a reference number for every call you make, and it will allow you to appeal a claim that has been denied or rejected based on an incorrect verification. And we're going to talk about the scripting of this here in just a second, but it's really important when you're talking to a live person is to repeat back what they told you, because if you repeat it back and then you say, is this correct? And they say yes, and you get their name, the time of the call, and the reference number, and then it comes back as something totally different, you can appeal that claim and say, this is what the customer service rep told me. They recorded this call. I want you to go back to the call recording, and I want you to honor the benefit quote that they gave us. Okay, and in 80% of the cases, you can actually get that claim pushed through, and at least from the time that the benefit quote was done until the error was discovered, they will go ahead and honor the benefits based on that verification. So very, very important, if you're going to be on the phone, that you gather up that vital information of the person you spoke to, the time of call, and the reference number. This is very time intensive. I'm not going to lie. It takes anywhere from, on an average, we do a lot of phone verifications for our clients. Our verification specialists, the ones that are really have got this down pat, they can do about 6 verifications an hour, which is 1 every 10 minutes. Some of them definitely take longer. Some of them take less time. It just depends. But on the average, it's going to take about 10 minutes to complete a telephone verification. So as you're thinking about this, you're going to have to think about the process for that from the standpoint of who could do this in your office. Or how are you going to make this work? And again, this is something that if you would want to talk to me on an individual basis about, I'd be more than happy to help you kind of think through that process. So, when you're doing your phone verification, sometimes the hardest part of a telephone verification is just getting through to a live representative. I said it takes about 10 minutes to do a telephone verification. About 5 to 7 minutes of that is just going through the automated voice response to finally reach, and being placed on hold to finally reach a live body. before you reach a live person, 95% of the time, you're going to have to go through an automated system. There are shortcuts. Some insurance companies will have shortcuts, and as you do more and more of these, you'll learn what those shortcuts are. You'll learn what keys to press to reach somebody more quickly than others. And if you're required to give responses using your voice, I'm going to recommend that you do not do that on speakerphone, because the IVR doesn't recognize that. Sometimes the background noise makes it very hard for the IVR to recognize the voice. And also, you need to speak very clearly and slowly, and not use extra words. So, for example, I was just training a new verification specialist in my company, and we were doing the IVR. And so she was, when she was doing the IVR, she was saying, like, please, and the IVR asked, what is the patient's policy number? And she would say, A like Apple, 4-5, M like Mary, 3-2, P like Papa. Well, after she got off the phone, I chuckled with her. I said, that they don't understand A like Apple. You just have to say the letter. Okay? So speak very clearly and slowly. If the IVR doesn't recognize your voice pattern, or you're just feel like you're not getting through, speak the words customer service or operator, and then most of the time it will allow you to go directly through to a live person. For common carriers like Blue Cross Blue Shield, Medicare, so on and so forth, you'll memorize those voice prompts over time, and it will make the phone calls go more quickly and be more efficient. So the script for insurance verifications. Number one is identify yourself, the clinic, and the purpose of the call. Always specify the type of benefit you're checking on. Chiropractic benefits would be the one that you would be checking on. So you would say something like, hi, my name is Mary, and I'm with Dr. Jones' office in Tallahassee, Florida. I'm calling to check chiropractic benefits on a patient. All right. May I ask your name and your employee representative number? Oh, Jonathan, thank you for that information. Okay, so then you get that information, you write it down on the form. Then they will ask you for the doctor's information, their tax ID, the NPI number. They may ask you questions like, is this the first time you have called on this patient? They may ask, is this the doctor who will be rendering the services? They may ask, is this doctor in or out of network? And if you don't know, you can tell them you don't know and ask them to check on it for you. So they will ask you some specific information about the doctor and about the patient encounter. And then they will probably place you on hold to pull up benefits. At that point, they're going to run through their script of benefits very, very quickly. I always tell people who are first doing insurance verifications, don't get intimidated by that. You can always go back. If you didn't catch it the first time, you can run through your verification form the second time or the third time, but just make sure you get all the information you need. Don't just feel like, oh, they're just going to give me this information and then I have to say, okay, thanks, and hang up. You don't want to do that. If you didn't get what you need, you go back to the top of your forms and you get all the information you need to get an accurate verification of benefits. And you would say something like, well, Jonathan, thank you for that information. Now, I didn't get all the information you gave me the first time around. I still have a few more questions. May I ask them now? And Jonathan or whoever is on that line will say, sure. So at that point, you go through your form thoroughly. Every check box checked, every answer, question needs to be answered. If you have specific CPT codes that you want to check to see if it is a covered code under the patient policy, ask to check on specific CPT codes. And you could say something like, Jonathan, my doctor performs certain procedures routinely. Would you please check on some CPT codes for me? And then you give the claims rep all of the codes that you want to have checked. Review the information again. verify the mailing address and payer ID for claim submission, and get a reference number. Jonathan, let me review the information you gave me. I see that you're telling me now that this patient has a $1,000 family deductible for chiropractic services, that they have met their deductible for the year, that they have a $3,000 out-of-pocket limit. They have met $1,255 of that out-of-pocket. And for chiropractic services, they have a limitation of 15 visits per calendar year, and they have used none of those visits. You are also told me that they have no copay, and that after the deductible is met, they have a 30% coinsurance cost share. You also told me that massage therapy is not a covered benefit. Is all of this correct? And Jonathan, you told me that there's no pre-authorization necessary for these services. Is that all correct? And Jonathan would then say, yes. Jonathan, you also told me that my doctor is showing as in-network on this plan. Is that correct? And you see, by doing that and by getting affirmative answers from that customer service rep, you're getting a recorded contract of that benefit in order to possibly have to appeal that down the road if it comes back incorrect. So make sure you get all of that information. This is an example. This is actually a generic verification form that we give to our billing clients when we're doing verifications for them. And we customize this for each one of our clients. Most of it stays the same. What we really change is, for example, under item 15, is there any limitations on chiropractic services? And then in 16E, if we have specific CPT codes that the doctor wants us to check on, we put them here. We also ask whether pre-authorization is required. Pre-authorization is required for services and what the details are of obtaining those pre-authorizations. And so this form can be customized. I would be more than happy to even send this generic form to you in a Word document. And if you would like to begin to implement this form in your own practice, if you don't like your verification form, if it doesn't give enough information to do a complete verification of benefits, feel free to send me a message and I'll be more than happy to send a copy of this form to you. So, final tips on this. Now, verifications can definitely be intimidating and stressful at the beginning. Make sure that you're using your verification form to structure your calls and take your time. In the beginning, accuracy is way more important than speed. You're going to get faster as you do this. You're going to get faster and more efficient at verifications with repetition. If you are on hold for an excessive amount of time, and I would say like over 10 minutes, you may want to consider calling back at another time of day. I will tell you that Mondays are usually a bad day to call for verifications. Later in the afternoon is usually a bad time to call for verifications. Mornings are usually the best time to call as far as the amount of hold time that you'll have, and the beginning of every month is really difficult for verifications. I will also tell you at the beginning of the year, many insurance plans put a policy in place in which they will not even allow telephone verifications at the beginning of the year for the first few months because they get such a backlog of calls. Everybody wants to verify every patient's insurance over again, re-verify all of your policies. And so, multiply that by the thousands and thousands of doctors. And so they may actually turn off the ability for a doctor to do a telephone verification and will require you to do your verifications online. So kind of be aware of that and make sure that you know which carriers are going to put that limitation on you at the first of the year. Again, try to get as much information from the patient when they call to schedule their appointment, and it will give you more time to complete your verification. The last thing I want to tell you is that many insurance companies have their customer service units off offshore, meaning in another country. And so sometimes you're going to call, and the person that you're going to be speaking to on the other end of the line has a really heavy accent. Maybe you don't understand them. Don't struggle through that. If that happens, one of the things you can do is to try to ask if they have a North American unit. If they do, they will ask them to be transferred. So if it's obvious that you're calling an offshore site and you don't understand the person you're talking to, you can be polite about it. You can say, hey, I'm sorry, I'm really having a hard time understanding you. Do you have a North American unit you can transfer me to? If they say we're unable to do that, then you can say, can you please then transfer me to somebody else because I really cannot understand anything you're telling me. And they will be obligated to do that, but don't be surprised if they get mad at you and cut you off and just make you and just hang up on you and make you call again. Those things do happen from time to time, but again, don't struggle through those language barriers. Now, the final thing that you have to do is, obviously, once you've gathered up all that information, then you have to explain all of that to the patient. And make sure that you keep it as simple as possible. I know it can be very intimidating for not just you, but for the patient as well, very overwhelming for them. But the first thing you have to let that patient know is that the information that you are providing them is simply information that your insurance carrier provided to you. And use the information use verbiage such as, Mrs. Smith, we spoke to Jonathan at Blue Cross Blue Shield. I have to tell you, the first thing he said to me was that he could not guarantee these benefits. So we cannot guarantee the benefits, but we are going to use the benefit quote that Jonathan gave me, and we will collect from you based on this benefit quote. I personally do not recommend that you use words like we verified your benefits or we did an insurance verification. I even would leave the word verification off the form and call it an insurance questionnaire, because when the word verification is used, it's like, well, this is what it is. You verified it. And so sometimes it's better just to say we got a quote of benefits from your carrier, and we will use this quote to proceed to the next step of collecting your out-of-pocket costs from you. But please understand that that sometimes what an insurance company will say and what they will pay are sometimes two different things. And so we'll go ahead and collect from you based on this benefit quote. But if it is different, then please understand you may owe more, you may owe less, but at least we'll be in the ballpark. So, and then you run through the different benefits that the patient has. So I do have a class that I can present to you all, and it'll probably be the next webinar that we do on more on the scripts, explaining benefits to patients, on securing payment from those patients at each visit or ahead of time, that type of thing. What to do if if you have to appeal a claim based on an incorrect verification. We can talk about that at our next hourly webinar. I'm not sure exactly what the date is going to be, but hopefully within the next month or two, we'll have a webinar for you on that. So with that concludes our presentation today. I am going to unmute everyone. If you have muted yourself, then you can go ahead and unmute yourself. And let me ask you, does anybody have any questions? There's one question here. This actually comes from Dr. Fennell. It says, do you find that online or fax verifications will always include whether or not 98943 is covered? If they don't know, how should a clinic seek out that information? Also, what about 97110 for therapeutic exercises? Great question. So if the online quote does not specifically give you CPT codes, you might want to check that 98943 on the telephone by calling the customer service unit. You can make the assumption, but sometimes you're going to be wrong. And if you have a, so sometimes what you're going to hear when the insurance carrier gives you a benefit quote on a particular code, they'll say the code is covered but based on medical necessity. And people ask me that question all the time. Well, what does that mean? What that means is it's based on the diagnosis. Based on medical necessity means it's based on the diagnosis. So typically what it would mean for a 98943 is that if you have a diagnosis that pertains to an extremity, then it would be considered medically necessary and it would be covered. So if it's based on medical necessity, it's based on the diagnosis and what the parameters are for treatment of that particular CPT code. 97110, you can check that code specifically and ask but what you would want to do is when you are checking for rehab, which is 97110 is a rehab code, you would want to specify, is this service covered when it is performed in a chiropractic office by a chiropractor, not by a physical therapist, okay, because it may be a completely different benefit structure, okay? As long as the chiropractor can perform 97110 in their scope of practice, it may be covered under the chiropractic benefit, but sometimes it's covered under a separate physical therapy benefit, even when the chiropractor even when the chiropractor performs it. So, any other questions? That was the only one that was typed into the chat. Does anybody have a question that they'd like to throw out right now? Okay, well, it sounds like there may not be any questions, or if they are, they may want to be kept private. If you do have a private question for me, I will take you back to the chat box with my contact information. You can reach me at 866-942-5655, or you can reach me on my cell at 325-374-9027. You can email me at goldstarmedical@msn.com. And I also have a website form submission that you can do an online questionnaire on my website by going to www.goldstarmedical.net and click on the free billing assessment questionnaire and ask any questions that you may have for me in that form. So I do thank all of you for attending today. I'm sure Dr. Fennell will let you know when the next webinar is going to take place that we will be doing. And again, if you do need a recording of this webinar for your staff, go ahead and let Dr. Fennell know in the next day or so. I will have a link to him for that recorded webinar, and I will also send him the handouts. Thank you, everybody, and God bless. Hope you have a great rest of your day.